one, Jen.
You are live.
Yeah, I like the one in color better.
Good morning, all. Thank you for the outcome tax meeting for September 28, 2023. I need a motion to approve the minutes of August 23rd, 2023. Mr. Stroud. Okay, Mr. Weil. Any questions? All in favor? All right, passed. All right, privilege of the floor is up right now. I don't see any hands. All right, we'll move on that. All right, the action agenda business item. It's to amend the local law 5 of 2018. The rationale for that is the resolution to amend the amount retained by Rowan County with respect to the administration part of the occupancy tax from 3 to 10%. And I think this. Are you going to talk about that?
I'm just here to answer your questions or to, if you want a synopsis of what's going on with it, I can give you that.
Why don't you just do a short little synopsis so people understand what's going on?
What happened was is that when the county decided to go with the Capital District Transit deal, Rob, my deputy, came to me and said, well, why don't we kick the administrative fee in the treasurer's office from 3% to 10%? And that'll kick in an extra $500,000 into the general fund to help kind of offset the loss of revenue from the clerk's office on the mortgage tax. And so that's basically where we're at. The original law was a 10% administrative fee. I had it reduced back or requested, and it was done back. It was about 10 years ago. Back down to 3% because we were running a little lean in the occupancy tax collections, and we really didn't need that additional administrative fee. So basically, that's where we're at. Instead of, we're budgeted right now for 24 at 3% would be, we're projecting 231,000. If you take it to 10%, that administrative fee would jump to about 750,000, which rolls back into the general fund. So it's kind of a way to help offset some of the loss of the revenue in the clerk's office for the Capital District Transit. Questions?
Mr. Stroud?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm very concerned because the use of occupancy tax should not be to make up for a loss that you're not getting from someplace else. I mean, what is the actual cost of administrating the occupancy tax? I can see going forward with that, and I would imagine that's closer to 3% than it is 10%. So on the surface, what I know now, I would be opposed to this.
Anyone else?
Can one argue that this is a tourism related argument? Because I know in past years that issue was brought up that when some of these taxes are raised that it has to be related specifically to tourism. So I guess that's my question. Would you argue that this is a tourism related?
Yeah, I get, I'll be honest with you. It was an idea we brought up and thought about. We presented it at the budget time. They thought it was a good idea, so it's here. Pros and cons, I'm not really going to get into that because that's not where I'm at with this. This was just an idea we came up with to bring forth to the committee and to the board to see if they wanted to consider it. So.
As I think Heather has
I
some.
can answer that a little bit more directly from a tourism director perspective, specifically to the trolleys that we have, and it's being run by the transit authority. That is specific to travelers. And also who uses that on a regular basis is the workers. Those workers that travel to and from work throughout the county and the locations that they are at. So indirectly, yes, or directly, if way you want to look at it, those trolleys are being used for tourists, and it's a great way to get our tourists around to other destinations within our county.
Mr. Stroud?
But there's no guarantee that this movement to the treasurer's office is gonna come back in a way in the form of tourism. I'd rather see it more directly used for tourism.
Wow,
Mr. Chairman, my only question with this, and I agree that there's a tourism component of what CDTA does. But how does the math get reflected here? So if we go to 3% to 7%, we're 7% more. What is that? What bucket does that come out of? Does that come out of the town share? Does that come out of the county share? Does it come out of the top line?
Comes off the top.
Off the top line. So the town shares and the county share isn't affected by this.
The town share will not be affected by it because of the fact that it's based on the total collections. Whatever that is distributed to the town is based on the total collections, regardless of where it goes within the system. Okay, the county, yes, we will, on our end, we'll see a little, because it's got to be made up someplace, it'll come out of the county share.
So, Mr. Chairman, I mentioned this before, we've got a windfall because of the work that the treasurer's office has done with vacation rentals. It's got $1 million plus for occupancy tax revenues. I'd like to see us do something with that. That's on a more of an infrastructure or a bigger bet piece. We've done things with Moment Factory for the winter, but I have concerns about the windfall and how it's being distributed to the towns. The towns are getting significantly more money. And I'd like to see more of that come back to the county for more significant countywide plays.
but that's
I
not,
know I have a bunch of supervisors that run towns that want that money for their towns.
but that's not what this part of.
I understand.
You're on a different subject right now.
We're still money, and it comes away from the county share for major events. Basically, is what we're saying. It comes out of the county share's money has been for major events.
The occupancy.
So, if you want the top line, then fine, and the top line gets reduced and the towns get reduced a little bit. County gets reduced a little bit, I could accept that, but not if it comes out of the county share.
But again, that's another whole discussion. Not on the floor, not on the table. And I have a position on that, but I'm not going to elaborate at this point in time because that's not the item before us.
I'm aware, pretty aware of your position.
Chairman,
Yeah, oh, sorry.
if I can just kind of frame it, I pulled up the enabling statute from 2003, which is in New York State tax law section 1202-U. And I kind of feel like Lloyd O'Reilly from Nash a little bit, but it's subsection 9 of section 202-U. And what that provides for is that a local law can provide that the county of Warren shall be authorized to retain up to a maximum of 10% of such revenues to defer the necessary expenses of such county in administrating such tax. So there does need to be some connection to the percentage and the cost. And I'm sure that's something that can be quantified going forward by the treasurer's office as far as how much is the cost in administering the tax. As far as looking back and determining whether 3% continues to be the right percentage after all of these years.
Gary?
I have a question, and this may relate to the treasurer's office and how they administer what they do with the occupancy tax. If somebody manages 10 or 12 properties now, are they allowed to just send one check in to those 10 or 12 properties, or are we actually reconciling what they send in to each property? So we know that that they're paying on each property that they manage.
You're talking about short-term rental?
Short-term, yeah, just short-term rentals. I know you have to do it on sales.
It's kind of a mixed bag on that. Most of them we have set up as each individual property and they have to report under that. Some of them, just because of the mechanism that they use, it's a lump sum. But the vast majority of them, we do have it broken down Because we have management companies out there and they may manage 8 or 10 properties. And so that we can determine where that money's supposed to go. Because if they're managing properties in multiple towns, we have to track it within each town to make sure that the town gets the proper credit for that collection. So that's how we break it out.
But my question is, if somebody is managing 10 properties. And they send you a lump sum check, how do we know that all they're paying you on all 10 properties if it's not broken down by property rental?
They have to break it down by the individual unit.
They do when they send it in, okay.
Yeah, we get one check, but they'll break it down on their return form is to X number from Y address.
So if you wanted to go in and check and see, did they rent this property a certain length of time, you could do that.
Yeah, well, yeah, we don't, but yes, we could,
No, but I mean, they could.
yes.
That's.
All right, so we're still back to this resolution here. Mr. Diamond, you have a
I got a
comment?
question for Mike. Mike, essentially what you're saying is that if you increase it from 3% to 10%, that's an additional $500,000 to $700,000 of more money coming back into the general fund. Correct. For use. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Well, I'll need a motion to be on the floor.
I'll put the motion.
Mr. Diamond, I need a second. I'll second it, just to get it on the floor. All right. We'll call a vote, roll call vote.
No.
Yes.
No,
Yes. So it's put off, right? It failed. All right. And we'll come back next month with a little less and we get this, maybe we'll get some more numbers of what 3% brings and what 10% brings, and maybe we can come up in the middle with a compromise for the next meeting. All right. Heather, if you want to take over the discussion on the occupancy tax.
So in the packets that you've either printed out or you have in front of you, you will see on the third page, if I handed it to you, it's the second actual page, but the third page in the packet. From an overview standpoint of occupancy tax, just to give you a quick background of how we came about this budget is we took into consideration what last year, 2022 brought in, which was 7.7 million. We are tracking slightly below that at the moment. And a big piece of that, as we all knew, was the winter. So I looked at a overall, and I know these numbers aren't right in front of you, but an overall budget from an occupancy tax receiving. So I'm assuming that we will receive $7 million in 2024. Of that, during discussions with various supervisors, it was decided or advised that we should keep the tourism budget the same. And therefore, which is about 2.4. So when you subtract 2.4 from the 7 million, we then get the number that you have in front of you. Now, based on allocations, I looked at I first looked at local laws based on the percentages of some of the points that were just brought up, the 3%, the 25% to the towns, and then also looking at existing contracts, regulations, so on and so forth. So the budget is very, what I'm going to call, there's only 2 line items that can really move on this budget, and that is special events and spending plan. The others are what I'm going to call contracted amounts, and therefore we are obligated by contract to fulfill these within there. So if we were to look at this, the recommendation is for $4,435,307. I can go in further detail or I cannot. I'm being conscious of time, but I have no issues with either. So I asked the committee to guide me on how you would like me to proceed in the budget identifications and line items.
Mr. Stroud? So, Heather, what you're proposing is a budget that's about 2.4 million less than the 2023 amended budget? Am I reading that right in terms of
So here's
expenditure?
where our so that 6.6, that includes the 3 million to the no, actually it wouldn't. It would include portions of the 3 million. And I say portions because some of those money, how we are paying those invoices are on invoices as needed. So we did a payment plan. So some of that is included in there. So if I had to go back and do calculations, this goes back to the report that I think I gave, it was 2 meetings ago, that identified where we were and how we were over. But in actual cash flow, it'll even out over the following years. You know, this isn't a good way to answer it, but it kind of goes back to how we've got to look at tourism from a year and a half versus just a year, because some expenses go out the following year, even though we might have a PO and a contract created in that current year. Am I making sense?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah, I
just
get it.
want to make sure.
Yep, no, I get it now. Thank you.
Mr. Diamond, I thought I saw your hand up. You did. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm looking at the 2022 actual, which is on 3. And it shows your revenue collection to 5,556,628. You're forecasting a decrease about $1.1 million in revenue. Is that, am I reading this correctly?
You're looking at the 2022 amount, correct?
Yeah, and you're forecasting or projecting that the 24 budget would increase or decrease by $1.1 million in revenue. Is my reading accurate?
You're reading it correctly. Here's one factor that I don't have available. So from the occupancy tax of the overall number comes the tourism dollars. And so what could have happened is, and again, I'm assuming based on these numbers and how I see it, less dollars went to the tourism department in 2022. That is a huge assumption on my part. But if based on how I've done my calculations to get to that 4.3 million.
Can you show us that at a later meeting?
I absolutely can.
At that number?
Yep.
The next question is, I know we get reports from Mike on a monthly basis, and he does speak in his report to actual revenues coming in from the occupancy tax. How come it doesn't show any forecasted in 2023? As forecasted, right? So we know how we're doing, comparing our projections to our actuals.
So you, let me just make sure I understand. So you want to see in here,
Well,
like,
in those cases, when a department has revenue, they show that in their budget, the actual amount of revenue, so you can do a comparison. Say, for example, I wanted to look at your projection for 2024. I could take a number that was posted as of the date of this report and come up with a broad forecast on whether you get that true number, actual number or not.
okay,
But what it doesn't show me here is if I look at your column here in 2023, your actual revenue had zeroed out.
That's because when the treasurer's office collects the money, it all goes into, there's 2 sections of the budget. There's the 0.1, which is the department, and 0.2, which is occupancy tax. At this point, they're putting all the money on the tourism side, and then about November, they make an adjustment and put it on the other side.
Why do we do that?
You'll have to ask the treasurer.
I'll speak. I just find it puzzling that, you know, these, you look down at the revenues and you
looking at, how are we doing?
I can tell you that for September, I looked at it this morning, we're only at this moment about $50,000 less than was collected in September last year.
That's good to know.
That is very good.
Okay, I think my question is.
All right, thank you.
And I will get back to you on that.
All right, any other questions? Well, we need a motion to move forward on this. No, we don't need a motion.
We just, part of the budget process is just to review it with you and to answer any questions that you have.
Then to apply for the training, you still have.
We have the occupancy tax funding.
Yeah.
The application
Oh, you can do that?
would be part of that, if that's okay. Okay.
Yep, I got it. Sorry.
So that's okay. In a continuation of last meeting, when we talked about some of the overview of occupancy tax, where we are with regulations, so on and so forth. We have come up, we at the tourism department, in conjunction with conversations of various supervisors, I've identified a couple of regulations that we need to look at. And come up with a decision of which direction we want to go in, because currently we are not always looking at these. And therefore, we need to address it in the committee level to see what is best for you as a committee. So glad I got to use my trees today. So looking at these, there's 4 different sections. Actually, before I go into this, I want to take a step back and just give you a very brief overview of the office internally and why we're going in this, why some of these are recommended in the way that they are. In the fact that you all know that I have promoted Paul Taggett to look more closely at the occupancy tax, because we need more eyeballs on it. And therefore, part of his role is going to be to work with applicants with regards to executing these contracts, or applying for the contracts and executing them, and so on and so forth. So part of that you will see within some of these regulations that we have set forth. So I wanted to put that as a precedence to understand that some of the work is being put internally in the tourism department to take care of some of the things here. So I'm looking at 4 different updates of regulations that we currently don't recognize and or we might have difference of opinions. I'd like to work them out in the committee. First is spending events, activities funding allocation. The next is application funding criteria, occupancy tax grant application, and the scoring criteria. Looking at the funding allocation, currently on regulation, number 287 of 2021, there's a flat dollar amount of $350 a prior year. Obviously, as we saw last meeting, we went over that probably 3 times. And I would like to make a recommendation that we look at a baseline or number, and then also have the ability to that be the minimum amount that we give away in the special events line. That will allow you as committee members to make those decisions should you see fit, and it doesn't hold you to keep back from supporting an event that may or may not, be of importance and very large economic impact to our county. I'm going to keep going through all 4 and then ask for comments after based on time, again, trying to keep respectful of your time. Looking at the funding criteria, again, this is another piece of not to exceed $50,000 in the application. It's 287 of 2021. We can use this as a benchmark, and maybe there's the opportunity to have anyone larger come to present to the committee. And at that time, you as a committee can decide whether or not you feel that project is able to apply for more than the $50,000. Again, it gives the ability for you to recognize the economic impact of that particular event that's being proposed. looking at the application process. We're looking to just move some of these dates along. One of the pieces that I think will be very helpful in these decisions is where we are budget-wise. And awarding based on the dollars that we have available in the budget. And therefore, we're coming and looking at applications being due for 2 different time periods in November and 1 in January. And then the following month, December and February, being awarded to the public. That does not mean that an applicant cannot come to us in between times. And again, as I think the onus should be on the committee to say, okay, we'll hear this application and we can review whether or not there's funding or not before we allow them to apply. And then the last piece is scoring criteria. I know that this was a big undertaking by these committee members. And therefore, parts of this is we'd love to be able to bring this into the tourism department to present to everybody on the committee level of a holistic approach. We can identify not only the economic impact, the success of the program should they have happened in the past, but also identify some things that the application might not do, which is recognize other things that are happening in the area. Look at maybe some campaigns we might be looking to run. There might be some research that we're seeing and trends that we can bring forth to help you make those decisions. But through that, we will utilize those strategies and the scoring criteria as a guideline. And that way we will do that internally and the tourism department because it has not been done. And therefore, I feel like it's a crucial part that I would like to help to achieve that so that we're actually looking at these not only at the application, but in its entirety. So at this point, I'll take any questions.
Gary,
The special event funding activities, is that, and an application funding criteria, is that? Are they in the same column, the 350 and 15? Is that in under special events? Is that what that equals to?
Yes, you mean the total, in with the budget right now, or?
Well, I'm looking at your special events, your 480 on your new budget. So does that take into account that you're going to offer 350 and the maximum that you can come in for is 50,000 out of that special funding, or?
Correct. 1,000 would be the top award unless
Unless the committee
it comes
decided,
to the committee and the committee decides if they want to exceed that limit.
and they have to take into account how much money is in the special event fund.
Yeah, correct.
That's why it's been increased on the budget.
Yes, yeah.
Just making sure.
So this year we have 500,000.
Right,
Yeah.
yeah, 500.
And I don't think that, one of the, also the other thought processes was we gave away 1.9 million this year. I didn't think that the supervisors felt comfortable leaving just 350 there. So it was also a number that based on the budget allocations, where the dollar
You
went.
gave us some wiggle.
I did. And one thing I do want to point out is there's a couple factors, and I apologize to go backwards, but there's a couple factors we didn't put into consideration in the $7 million assumption, is the fact that we have this new winter event. And we anticipate there being more dollars received from occupancy tax, as well as it coming back to us. So I think that it's also, good to recognize in the back of our minds that after the first quarter, let's see where we are. If there are things that are not in the budget that you feel very strongly of, or something comes up, we have that ability to look at those dollars, but I don't think it's economically sound to, at this point, to make a recommendation on a budget number that we're in the first year of.
okay, Gary, with that. All right. Any other questions? All right. Mr. Diamond.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I got a question under business promotions. You're asking for requesting 714,000. Year to date, we've spent 483. almost 300,000 more. Could you tell me what that additional money, because it's significantly more than 2022, 23's budget, what that money is going to be used for?
Yeah, there's a footnote under 480.04. That's that tells you where that money is being spent.
Black Dog Design for
Right.
5,000.
Mhm.
Lake George TV is 274,000.
Right,
ACC, 100,000.
per year, and that's a new thing, that's new this year.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I apologize. You're looking at the business promotion, the 0.5. That would be the CVB, the Visitor Center, the Lake George Radio, and Lake George Event Manager for Bob Lice.
Oops, sorry.
Okay,
That's where those dollars come from.
okay, not what we're just
Oh,
mentioning.
sorry.
Is there an increase in monies being appropriated to the Lake George CVB?
Just $50,000.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Wow.
Yeah, I like the changes or updates to the regulations that you're proposing. I think it's a move forward. The only question I have is, again, going through the application, and this has been brought up before. Smaller events, especially new smaller events, are gonna see that application and that get quite overwhelmed. And I wouldn't want to prohibit a new smaller event from occurring because you never know where it might go. But the way the application is set up, it's great for Americade or,
Yeah.
or professional people are gonna fill it out. It's kind of overwhelming.
Yep.
For a smaller event. We've even suggested that for the smaller newer events, that would go back to the old application because that was a lot simpler.
So two things. One of the things with Paul is anyone who is a new applicant, we require them to come in and sit with us. So we can walk them through the entire process. Also, we're here to help them apply, help them to complete it. So that will help those that are new to the process. The secondary piece, which we'll go over right after we're good with these regulations, is the application I have shortened. I haven't deleted any information. I have shortened it. There's a lot of information in that application that talks about what happens when you get awarded, how you complete your reporting, so on and so forth. But let's just have them concentrate on the application first. If they're new applicants, they'll already know about all the different steps. But in the application process itself, we have shortened it so that they focus strictly on the application and getting us the information that we need to make a better decision for, on the event.
That's good. Yeah, good.
I just have one.
Well,
That's with the funding criteria for the $50,000 limit. What I'd like to see is, if they're gonna go above that limit, that they're either something new or something that's a significant change from what they've done in the past. Let inflation do what it does and kind of reduce their awards if they've been at this for 4 or 5 years. But kind of limit this in terms of what we do to make sure that there's some kind of significant change or brand new.
Yeah, the Bloom Festival.
Significant change, 50-year.
Well, otherwise, yeah. Third largest balloon festival in the country. It is the largest balloon festival put together by volunteers, about 30 people who get paid nothing for their services. But the expenses keep going up. If you want to continue having great balloon festivals, of which the estimated attendance was 200,000. And costs and inflation, they may come in for more than 50,000 if you want to keep having this balloon festival. Or we can do like Albuquerque, where they spend $4 million to have employees put the balloon festival together. Or maybe 55,000. I'm just saying, if you're going to limit it to 50,000, keep in mind of what the event is and what's involved with the event. I think you have to be open-minded.
But
I think the committee will be.
yeah, but that's it. What you just said on this way is that 50 is there and then anything else, they have to come back again with the extra amount. That's what that bottom part is saying.
Yeah, and I
So
agree
we
with
can
that.
come back for another 50,000,
agreeable.
but we have to vote on it.
But to make something absolute, it's not so agreeable.
But that's what, I think that's what we were emphasizing, is we got the maximum 50 now. And say the Balloon Festival wants to come back next year to get that 50, and then they're figuring they're gonna make it half the size bigger. They need another 50. They have to come back with the application and it gets voted on it with this committee or whatever committee is at the time.
Okay,
So that protects you for what you're saying.
You like tax revenues for the Bloom Festival?
Not yet, I don't think, yeah. I think-
We'll get something,
No.
right?
this is just a discussion, right?
We do have to, well, we don't necessarily have, well, I apologize. I went in a circle, kind of come around circle. It would be beneficial if we do this because we're asking for applications to come in by November 1st. And we have, this would then need to go through the board of October. Did you ever hear that? I'm sorry. Oh, sorry. Then we would have October 20th as the board meeting. So we would need to get these applications. If we are going to apply, because right now the applications are due October 1st. So there's a couple of things in here that I would recommend that we make these unless there's something in here that are extremely,
So you want it to be an action item, you would like the approval of this committee going forward.
yes, please.
I'll make the motion.
Thank you.
Do we need a resolution to go to the board to get that changed? This one,
We will, and we'll create that resolution.
Right, the next one coming up.
It was more of, I didn't want to create it if the committee was not ready to do it. But I needed to also give you the details of the timing behind it and allowing the public enough time to.
All right, so I got a motion. Did I get a second?
Can I clarify, what's the motion for? Because there's a number of different resolutions referenced on.
Well, approving the recommended updates to regulations that are before us in red.
Okay, so the modifications would be for the resolution 287 of 2021 as well as 441 of 2021.
Right,
Thank you.
so I got a motion and I think
Seconded.
Mr. Diamond seconded. Any other questions? All in favor? Opposed? Pass.
Thank you. And then one other last piece is the application itself. You do not need to look at this in its entirety. I know it's a lot, but I wanted to pass this out. This is the shortened version of the application. Please take a look at it. I just basically reordered it. And therefore, if you want to take a quick look at it, I didn't think so.
There's my number, Jack.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you. I'll give you one. Make sure I have enough here. Thank you. I got another one for you. I killed trees this time. That is a reference this is updated. And I'll send you a hard copy, electronic copy of that. So what you're seeing in here is half of what the application is. So what I took out is anything that had to do with what their responsibilities are in order, once they get awarded. i.e. certificate of insurance, i.e. What they need to submit during, I just gave mine away. Can I borrow yours? Absolutely. So really, very minimal here is changed. We changed the date to the rules of the guideline. We provide them with the rating and the evaluation criteria. The application form is the same. Why? This is great work here that was done already. And I don't think that any of it really needs to be changed. We just need to shorten it a little to make it easier. The only one thing changed, and I know you'll see the numbers out of order. The reason why you're seeing numbers out of order in this document is it references the page numbers in the actual original application, so you have the ability to go back and forth. So if you look at page 12, the actual number page 12, it's under events marketing. What we have done is we have a section here that calls permits and licensing. And safety and law enforcement needs. Our office does nothing with any of that. So, and it's my understanding that it doesn't even go anywhere else. And therefore, it doesn't mean that we can't put a comment in there that say you must, but I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, our contract would specify the needs of certain things like those so that we are protected. And therefore, we don't need to ask for all this extra paperwork of permits and permits of vendors and things like that when our contract already protects us of that. That is the only major change in here. Other than that, it's just reorged and less paperwork for someone to fill out that may only request $10,000. And if we want to get this out, and I understand it might be a little bit of a hurdle, we don't necessarily need to approve this because it's the same application. But before this is approved, they would have to fill out the entire old application. So if you want until the next occupancy tax to review this, that is fine. Just know that when we do ask for applications, we have to ask it for in the old format until this is passed. And I will go with the committee's recommendation on whether or not to pass it now or to wait. Either does not affect the process of the approvals going forward.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Was the original application approved by resolution? by the
Yes.
board?
Yeah, and that was gonna be my comment. I believe the application that's currently in effect was approved by resolution. We can't just change that. Going forward, the board could decide to delegate that application authority, but if they're approving the application with the resolution, that's the application.
Thank you. I didn't know that.
And I guess the second point is we'd want to follow up and address some of those additional items that are required by contract. There's a reason to make sure everyone knows that when they put the application in, so we might want to have further discussions about that.
Based on that comment, if I may, because I want to review some of that what the attorney has said. I would, unless you feel comfortable, I think we might want to wait till the next occupancy tax committee just to make sure that we address some of the attorney's concerns. And we're not prematurely removing stuff that actually should be part of this. And I apologize, I should have reviewed it with you, moving a mile in these last couple of weeks.
All right, we'll leave it at that for the next meeting. All right, where are we going now? The attorney stay well.
I'm proud to announce that we can remove that from the agenda as the director of tourism has taken over that position. I know she's worked with my first assistant as well.
Okay, so we'll have no, so that's
It's really the product that you just reviewed.
okay.
Yep.
Good, all right. So we'll move on, produce to the floor, anybody? See a hand up there, yes.
If I may, Chairman, I'd like to just quickly address the revenue that we've collected because September is kind of a critical month. Just real quick, I'll hand this out while I talk. We're down 1.01% from last year, which was a record year. But on the second page here, I've got some, got some information about collections that are based on year-to-date and September collections. And that I think are interesting. One of the charts on the second page shows that in September, they're required to make payment by September 20th. Okay, and this reflects the quarter over the summer. And if you look, you'll see that in September alone, we collected $2.5 million, which is half of what we've collected for the entire year. So that shows you where the summer's coming from. That's where the money is. And yep. And the short-term rentals, they're way ahead of last year.
but they're still low because we usually don't collect the short-term rentals until December. Because they're on an annual cycle, most of them. Any questions? I just wanted to, this is kind of an important year or important time because this is the end of the summer when our collections are in, just to let you know that we're on par with a record year from last year. Questions, anybody? Nothing to do with me, I just like those. Well, let's put it this way, the 1,350 short-term rentals that we have registered consume about 80% of our time. Staff time.
He should have that. Look that up before we voted on it. Yeah, I mean, that's a, I won't say it, but it should have been before we turned down the other 10% part. That consumes 80% of your time. And we'll get back to that and adjust it, I think.
Any other questions? I just felt like it's information you guys needed to know right now, especially at budget time.
And I will make sure you're on the agenda next, Mike. I apologize. You fell off. I'm gonna be honest. I'll
That's
put you
fine.
back on.
I'd like to be forgotten most of the time.
Oh, no, never.
All right, any other comments to the floor or any more comments to our treasurer on what he just presented us?
Just one thing, like, Mike, you don't mind, you know, even short-term rentals, Johnsburg, if I'm not mistaken, I was kind of surprised by this, has the largest number of short-term rentals in the county, right?
No, they're second now. I can't remember who jumped ahead of
And the
them,
receipts are
but it's
pretty,
pretty close.
but the receipts are pretty low. Does that mean it's more of a winter type of thing that they?
Yes, right. What Johnsburg has two townhouse condo type developments up there that have 250, 300 units each. There is one management company that handles all of the short-term rentals for those two projects. And if you are an owner in there, you are required by contract to go through that management company. So yes, the majority of that comes from the fact that almost all of those rental units, or I should say townhouse units and condos are short-term rentals. And the majority of that is in the winter.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? All right. With that, I need a motion to adjourn the out tax committee. All right, Mr. Diamond, Mr. Stroud. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Pass.